How did you get your start in trading?
I think I was always in awe of my dad. And he wasn't at the exchange when I was a boy. He was an accountant. And he joined this new place and he took me to work when I was about 10 years old. And I saw there were only three pits in those days at the Merc. I mean, there were still things traded on the boards, but there were the big markets were the hogs, the pork bellies, and the cattle. And I saw all these guys that were in our backyards on the weekends, or we were in their backyards, and they're all yelling and screaming. And I was too young to understand money or how much was being made or not made or what their lifestyles were or anything like that. I just saw these guys yelling, having fun, and that was their job. And nicely so, my dad was friends with a former member. I think his name was Floyd Baker. He was 80 when I was 10, so I think he's been gone for quite a bit. But he used to sit with me. I always say he was my very first mentor because at 10, my dad would just walk up to the visitors gallery and say, "Hey, Floyd, don't let the kid get in any trouble." And I would just sit there and he would talk to me about the markets, tell me how to read the markets, talk to me about the time. They were trading onions and it became that the onion sacks were worth more than the onions. He told me a story where Marshall Field, the original Marshall Field of Chicago, was, short wheat. He explained short wheat. And some guy for the first time from Canada sent wheat down in the river to stick it to him. And all these stories started dragging me in. I just wanted to spend time there. So pretty much every time I had a day off, I went there until I could start working there when I was 15.
Who would be in the backyard with you?
I was sitting in the backyard with guys that we all know as, legends of the industry, Leo Melamed, Barry Lynn, Tom Ditmer, Les Rosenthal from the board, you name them, they were there. Jack Sandner. It really was like a boys' club at that point, and everyone did kind of look out for each other. And I'm sure there's always competition, but it was a much smaller, tighter community. And it was, the things I got to learn from those men, I didn't realize till years later. I still call upon the things I heard that apply to life sometimes. I mean, it was really quite fascinating.
What was your educational background?
I went to Indiana University, which is where my dad went. I met my wife there. The mistake was I had a pretty decent freshman year, and then I started trading that summer, and I made quite a bit of money for an 18-year-old in 1980. That was it for me. I wanted out. I wanted to just start trading, and my dad made it quite clear. At that point, I think he might have been second vice chairman of the exchange, I think. He made it very clear that he would love to help me get started in 3 years. But if I chose to leave college, he would make sure not only wouldn't he help me, but that no one would ever trade with me in the city of Chicago. So I ended up studying psychology and economics. And I often got asked the question, why not business? So many of the guys study business. And my answer was, having watched markets and knowing that I wasn't going to be an accountant and I wasn't going to, be a computer or anything. And at that point, I had read the original Bible of traders, Reminiscence of a Stock Operator. And I understood that most of this was psychological because, people to this day talk about markets and markets and markets. And in the end, markets are made up of people. And if you can understand how mass amounts of people are thinking, you've got a better shot at understanding a market than if you have some crazy degree in some weird thing. And what I find interesting about today is we are now facing the first time where it may not be people deciding because, people will come back at me now and go, well, there's algorithms, Scott, and they're so much faster. Yeah, but people still wrote those algorithms. And at some point in time, if artificial intelligence becomes what they're all thinking it will be beyond, what it does now for guys like us, which is just scour the internet and give you all the information. If it starts thinking for itself, it will be the first time that speech that I've given 1,000 times that human nature won't matter. And a different type of intelligence might say, hey, I think the Dow's worth 90,000 or 10,000. And we have no idea. So I do think that'll be quite interesting.
What style of trader were you?
My dad made me, while I was in college during the year. Do you remember they used to sell those charting books every week? And I would make charts for myself every week. And I did all this charting stuff. I made about $30,000. Most of the money I made was getting lucky. I was supposed to trade ones and twos. That turned into a 5, and I got caught into a pig crop report and made about a third to a half of that money there. Then got lucky a couple other times. And how did I know I got lucky? Because my first full year trading, I made $11,000 and went to bed with tears in my eyes every night. I got caught the right way in the market. And of course, that made me feel much smarter than I am. And then I was, hooked for life. But I was always, even in college, I was looking at the markets every day, even if that meant there was no internet. So I could watch financial news, but there wasn't a lot of futures yet. And FNN was just starting, which ended up morphing into CNBC. Every year when I would get ready to work over the summer and trade a little bit over the summers, I was ready to go. I knew, whatever the hottest market was. When I got out of school in 1984, the S&P had opened 2 Augusts before, and that was the hot ticket. Because, I imagined myself probably trading currencies because the meats were kind of getting for the older generations and the currencies were the game. And then they opened the S&P and that went crazy. Kind of mimicked back in the early days, the pork bellies were like the S&P of the meats. It moved crazy. So I was kind of used to that. And so that rhythm worked for me. I can't tell you how many guys I met that really busted out in 2 or 3 different markets and then found a market and did incredible. The personality and the rhythm of the market have to kind of match. And if you don't know what that is, you got to keep looking for it. You can't keep beating a dead horse.
How did you get your first membership?
So in 1984, I'm out of college, and my dad was actually having a bit of a time himself in the markets, which I had seen a couple times before. This was a little bit more severe. So he was like, I can't really get you a seat now, but, try. So I don't think I can get in trouble anymore for this. So I was in a yellow coat putting trades in his account, for the first 6-8 months. And then one of his friends, Mark Milstein, offered to let me use his IOM seat for free. And I think they were like $500 a month, but they might as well have been 500 million to me. I didn't have any money. Tom Ditmer from Refco backed me, scared the hell out of me. Something I needed. I grew up a little bit spoiled and now there's no money. And I went to Tom, who I had known as my dad's friend. And obviously to create Refco, he was quite the mind and also quite the personality. And I sat in his office and he said, so what do you got? And I said, well, I've got like $10,000 or $12,000 equity in a car. And don't think I won't take it from you. Don't think I won't take it to you and give it to my son and we'll be in a parade waving to you. I won't hesitate. And I left that office shaking, and I thank him every time I see him for that. That began my career. I started with like $2,000 to trade with. And I was watching these guys, and with all the money I had made over the summers, which I now knew was kind of probably not accurate, that I needed to accumulate some money. And I was still, fresh out of college, living at home. And I went, I'm going to try and make $200 a day and just leave. And just, I got called lazy or not paying attention. Well, I was watching the market all day. I just left the pit. I made $200 every day until it got up to like $10,000. And then I started making a little bit more every day. And I followed that pattern for probably the first 2 years of my career. And that was able to let me accumulate, $100 to $150,000 and then begin, trading, as most traders say, what the market will give you. Because while I always believed that, I think the S&P taught us a lot of new things about the market. I think it taught us about Bitcoin before Bitcoin, and it also taught us how volatile markets could be, what they could be. And my theory to this day, I still say this, whether you're on a computer or in a pit, if you're trading equity futures all day long, you are going to step on a grenade. There's just no way around it. It's too fast, too much movement, too much stuff, you're gonna get hit. So if you can play hit and run, if you can find that period of time that you're good in, some guys are great on the open, the close, in the middle, wherever you find your time, capitalize on that and then walk away till tomorrow. And you make way more money than you think. But the guys that came up through the old days, the longer you stayed in the pit, the more you made money. And that was always true in markets like Eurodollars and T-bills. But also cattle, hogs, if you stood there, it was slow, buy, sell, scalp. The S&P was too fast for that, just in my opinion. A lot of guys stood there all day long, and some of them could do it. Most of them can't.